I'm really excited about this next guest because sometimes we talk just all pure politics, what's going on in Washington, D.C., on the other side of the river. And I think this is a really awesome opportunity to talk a little bit about this side of the river that we broadcast from, the radical side of Martin Luther King Avenue, where We Act Radio is located, and something that far too few people know about, which is a unique music to Washington, D.C. And in fact, every time you listen to the show and you hear the music that brings us in and out of the segments, it's a band called Lettuce, which is a New York-based funk band. And but they have a frontman, Nigel Hall, who's from Southeast Washington, D.C., and they are one of the few mainstream bands that I've seen that plays go-go music at their shows. Go-go music is a music that is unique to Washington, D.C. It is fantastic. Probably the most famous, the creator and most famous person associated with go-go is Mr. Chuck Brown, who also is a big supporter of We Act Radio. He passed recently, or a few years ago now, but when we launched the station, one of the things that we had was this big picture of Chuck Brown, and he signed it to We Act Radio. And so I'm just really excited about getting to talk about this. So I probably should have brought Diallo Sumbry in earlier, but I got excited getting to talk about go-go music. Diallo is the CEO of the Adinkra Group. And Diallo, thank you so much for joining us here on the Zero Hour.
Thank you for having me on the 0 Hour. I appreciate your time and your effort.
So, what do you think about my setup? Because I think probably the single most famous go-go song, I mean, Busting Loose is probably there, but I do think it's probably EU's Da Butt, which was featured in School Days, in the movie School Days. But other than, I think, those two crossover songs, go-go is it's like not very well known outside of Washington, D.C. Can you just tell us a little bit about the history of go-go, and then we can take the conversation from there?
Well, yeah, sure. I can definitely tell you what I know. I'm definitely not a foremost expert on the genre of music, but as a fan, as somebody who loves history myself, as somebody who loves all things black, all things African music, I can tell you that go-go came out of the 60s and 70s funk era. And one of the things that make go-go unique is the syncopated drum rhythm, the congos that happen that gives it what we call the go-go swing. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned Chuck Brown as one of the progenitors of the music and known as the godfather of go-go and the founder of go-go music. Go-go has this unique swing. But for lack of a better term, the majority of go-go music and go-go bands, again, for lack of a better term, you would consider a cover band where you might play a famous song and then you add that go-go swing. Another very important element of go-go music is the call and response between the band and the audience. So go-go comes out of the neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. So a lot of what you'll find in go-go music is the lead talker or lead singing communicating back and forth with the crowd by calling out different neighborhoods, by calling out people from the neighborhoods who may be famous or infamous, and then by just kind of, again, communicating back and forth with a call and response. So, you know, it is unique to Washington, D.C. I think you hit it on the nose with Bustin' Loose and Da Butt. But because of the number of people, I think, who are from D.C. that have traveled out and about around the world, even though go-go hasn't necessarily sunk its teeth hardcore in other parts of the world, I can tell you that it's everywhere. I was just looking at a YouTube video of a Japanese band playing go-go music, which probably stemmed from years ago. So, you know, it's like a folk music. It's definitely in and of D.C.
And what I love about it is, and we're going to, what I love about go-go music is everything about it. But so maybe not everyone knows about it, like the public, but if you talk to musicians, if you talk to drummers or percussionists, there's no professional musician who doesn't know about go-go. They know how to get the sound, but if you ask them, which I actually did, I asked my friend who's a professional percussionist at a band. They sell out 930 Club 2 nights every time they come here. Their sound is not go-go, but he's a percussionist. He loves, right, this is his profession. And I asked him what it was, and his answer went on for like 22 minutes because it is a complicated thing of what that sound is, but it does come back to the syncopated beat. It does come back to the fact that this call response and the syncopated beat are actually somewhat directly from African music, from a world music. It is a line, a thread that connects this musical sound. And that is amazing. That's like one of the magical parts of music, is that it can continue that way, right? It can travel, and even when a history is extraordinarily violent and contains, chattel slavery like the United States of America does and is founded on, music can continue and can have an identity that is passed along generation by generation. So with that kind of setup, and I hope you, if you disagree, let me know where I'm wrong. For sure, you're the expert here. But tell us what you're working on now and how go-go fits into that, and the focus on arts and culture and raising people up through arts and culture here in Washington, D.C.
Well, I think it's the perfect segue. So our project is taking the Backyard Band from Washington, D.C. to Ghana, West Africa, on a tour to perform several times throughout the country of Ghana, and to film a documentary about connecting go-go with its African roots. So one of the things about go-go music, and I know you said you all normally talk about politics and you wanted a break, but it's hard to take a break for that. So when you think about the resilience of go-go music and what it's been through in a city like Washington, D.C., that's going through massive gentrification right now, you can see the resilience of the music itself is the same resilience that's embodied in the DNA of African people who went through chattel slavery and hundreds of years of degradation and attempted genocide. So the music itself, for me, represents so much more than just the music of the culture. Like, I have this saying where I say, D.C. without go-go is just Washington. I'll say that again. D.C. without go-go is just Washington. For me, it's still the heartbeat of the city. It's still what moves the city. So what we're doing is taking a go-go band, again, to Ghana, West Africa, to show the roots. Now, that resilience that I spoke about, I think, is really important for African Americans specifically, and Black people throughout the diaspora, in an age and a time that we're in right now, the way this country is being run, with just more over racism and white supremacy coming to the forefront. I believe that one of the things African Americans need to do is to connect with their ancestral roots. And the amazing thing about the music surviving that time period that you talk about is that ancestral memory. So for those of the people listening who are history buffs or who understand D.C. history, I think they know that D.C. was never meant to be a residential place for people to live and thrive. It was meant to be the seat of the government. But at the time when it was time for slavery to end or to begin to end, there were just really too many enslaved people or indentured servants, too many Black people here to just say, okay, we just gonna only have government workers. And what we carried with us through jazz, through blues, through funk, is that music, that spirit, that culture that eventually turned into go-go. The same way when you go down to New Orleans, you'll see that spirit, that culture turned into second line music. So it's really geographical. But that's why I said it's a folk music in a sense, because it's specific to this area. That go-go beat, that funk, that drive is the spirit of the people. So for us, the Adinkra Group, our company, is an African cultural resource company. And what we look to do is to connect people with Africa, to build that bridge between African Americans, Africans in the diaspora, with the African continent. And for this particular project, we partnered with the Ghanaian Tourism Authority we partnered with AfricanAncestry.com. So the band has taken their AfricanAncestry.com DNA test. It'll be revealed while we're in Ghana, and then the band will also connect with some local musicians. So we want to show the similarities with the culture, and we hope that what this does is begin to help young people in D.C., other musicians in D.C., and artists to stop being afraid of the African that comes before the American in the way that we describe ourselves. And I think that a lot of power, the power behind that resilience comes from, being connected to your roots, being connected from your culture, and embracing the history in order to be able to move forward. I know I said a lot, I talk a lot, so you guys jump in and stop me, if I'm ever
No,
going
this is
too far.
I can always jump in. I wanted you to that was really a perfect, description of what the project is, and it's so important to us at We Act Radio and my business partner Kimon Freeman to do this, because it's about it's about identity, and it's about the historical importance, the resilience, the perseverance, the actual rage and anger and heartbreak and pain that it takes for a people to get through something like a country being built on their enslaved backs. And
exactly.
I don't want to go. We could talk for hours about this, but I just want to really quickly go. My family, half my family, or my mom's side of the family, is from Brazil, and Brazil, in the north of Brazil, is the center of Afro-Brazilian culture, and the music there that comes out of there, you hear all over the Caribbean as well. You hear influences all the way, obviously, up into America with reggae. A lot of people love that, and that has that also, that syncopated beat. It has that unique reggae sound, and that, just as you said, and you go to New Orleans and you find these musical echoes. You find it in go-go. You find it in Brazil, and what you're seeing there is the power of music, right? People's lives were shattered through the transnational slave trade. It was definitely an attempted genocide, but the echoes that were able to be passed down through certain things, right? Certain stories, certain things, but the music being such an important part of carrying that history forward and that identity forward through generations. And in America, especially in the United States of America, especially, through incredible efforts to erase that history, to erase any ties to where a people came from, and that the music actually shines through in all these different locations, right? So that is what is truly amazing to me, and so powerful, and it's actually somewhat the hope that I have for humanity. I have always said that if it weren't for music and art, humanity would not be worth saving. It wouldn't be worth fighting for. Life would be unfair without music and art. So your project to now, we know that it came through, and now you're actually going back to connect that thread now, is such an exciting project. So in the last couple minutes here, just tell us, how can people get involved? What can people do? They hear this segment, they want to learn more. Where can they go? Or what can people do to just further this work that you're leading on?
So there are a couple of things. You talked about going back. One of the most important parts of this project, if not the most important part, is that most people are familiar that in slave dungeons around West Africa, they all had a door of no return. And that door of no return is where where enslaved people exited to enter the ships to say to have never returned. So the band will be performing inside of Cape Coast Slave Castle or dungeon, directly over the male dungeon. And for me, this was one of the ways that I could repay my ancestors for their sacrifices, is by coming back and showing this resilience. One of the ways that people can contribute and help and get involved is to check out the website, which is BYB2Africa.com, BYB2Africa.com. There's a donate page there for people who can't go. We know that everybody can't necessarily go and experience it with us, but we are still raising some funds to complete the documentary. As you know, running WEAC Radio, these things take a lot to make happen, but we are happy to say that everybody has their tickets purchased. We're set, hotels, transportation, we're on the ground, but we do still need assistance with completing the documentary portion. I mean, people could also, again, visit that website if people want to find out more about what the Adinkra Group does. Our website is www.adinkra, ADINKRA group.com. They can follow us on social media, Instagram. Now, let me just say that another really important part to this is when we partner with the Ghana Tourism Authority, they asked us to make this an annual festival. So this is just the first year. So we will be going back next year. So for people listening who say, oh, it's too late, it's not too late. You can definitely join us next year and get involved. But again, check out the website, byb2africa.com. If anybody has any other ideas, things they want to do, we definitely want to be able to get more into the school systems to introduce this to the youth. We're interested in partnering with other people to further this mission of connecting and building that bridge. I want to say a big, big thank you to you, to WEAC Radio. Kimon Freeman is my brother from another mother. We've known each other for years and always doing the same work. He's actually going on a trip, so, you know what I mean, he'll have a firsthand experience of everything that happened, and I'm just really appreciative of you all showing love to the project, giving us a platform and an opportunity to talk about it.
Diallo, I want to just, we always talk about politics because the truth is politics is just reality. I want to say the reason that it's hard to keep the doors open at WEAC Radio, the reason that we have to hustle every day to keep the doors open at WEAC Radio, the reason that it's hard to lead a project like you're leading is because the corporate power in this country is predicated on an ignorance by the people of who we are, and very importantly, of the power that we hold, and that all power resides in the people. They spend billions of dollars dividing us up, cutting us up, making us all feel like we have to stand on our own, that we're not part of a family, of a people, with an ability to fight back their attempts to steal everything that we have, including our identities. That's why it's hard to do things like these independent media voices. Diallo, I want to thank you again for everything that you're doing. BYB2Africa.com. I want people to go there. Diallo, thank you so much for joining us on the Zero Hour.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.